So imagine this. You're driving a truck, minding your own business, and suddenly something goes very wrong. That's what happened to a truck driver in Western Australia on the 5th of July 1995. Let's call him the injured truck driver. On that day, the injured truck driver was driving his truck as usual when another truck driver, let's call him co-worker A, let him know that a spare tyre might have fallen off the truck. So naturally he stops to check. But then the driver's side door, which by the way had been faulty for a while, does something unexpected. The handle, it just snaps, and the injured truck driver's right ring finger, well, that got severely lacerated in the process. Now this wasn't just a little scrape, no, this injury was serious. We're talking nerve damage and eventually amputation, all because of one broken truck door. Now here's where things really start to spiral. This injury, it didn't heal like a regular cut. The truck driver's hand developed a neuroma, which is basically a painful lump at the site of the nerve damage. It kept getting worse with pain, swelling, and loss of strength. By the time he had surgery to remove the neuroma and eventually had to amputate the finger, he had lost over 80% of his hand's strength. But it wasn't just the physical pain. The truck driver's life changed in every way. He couldn't even play cricket anymore, something that had been a big part of his social life. The emotional toll, massive. He developed a chronic adjustment disorder with depression because, let's be honest, how could you not? So what happens next? Well, obviously the truck driver lodges a workers' compensation claim against his employer, and you might think, oh, the employer will accept responsibility, right? Wrong. The employer, let's call him the trucking contractor, denied everything. According to him, the accident was unforeseeable. There were no complaints about the door before, so how could he have known this would happen? But then two other co-workers, we'll call them co-worker A and co-worker B, stepped forward. Both confirmed that the door had been faulty for quite some time. So the court had to figure out, was the door's condition really the cause of the injury? Or was the truck driver just unlucky? The court brought in an engineering expert to examine the evidence. Now here's where things get technical. This engineer conducted tests on similar door handles and found they could withstand over 200 kilograms of force. But, and here's the kicker, the actual handle that caused the injury. Yeah, it wasn't available for testing, so the expert's findings were, let's say, limited. But in the end, the judge wasn't having any of the trucking contractor's excuses. The judge ruled that the employer had indeed breached his duty by failing to maintain the truck. The risk was foreseeable, especially since the door had been faulty for some time. It wasn't just a fluke, it was negligence, and negligence in high-risk industries like trucking. That's a big deal. So what did the injured truck driver get for all his pain and suffering? A payout. But we're not talking pocket change here. He was awarded $742,180. Let's break it down. First, there was $40,000 for pain and suffering. Because, let's face it, that kind of physical and emotional trauma deserves compensation. Then, there was a past loss of earnings. This wasn't a small sum, over $261,000 to cover the time he couldn't work, calculated over 322 weeks at over $800 per week. He also got around $16,000 for part loss of superannuation, $35,000 in interest on past loss, and a Fox versus Wood allowance of $27,000. And that's not all. For future loss of earnings, the truck driver received over $288,000, based on future earnings calculated at $873 per week with a 10% reduction for contingencies. There were also future superannuation losses of around $22,000 and future medication costs just shy of $15,000. Oh, and special damages. That's another $34,000. All in all, it came to $742,180. But here's the thing. It wasn't just about the money. This case was bigger than just one man's injury. It was about the importance of proper equipment maintenance and the responsibility employers have to keep their workers safe. In high-risk industries like trucking, it's not just a door, it's a matter of life and livelihood. The court didn't hold back, ruling that the employer had breached their duty of care under the Occupational Health, Safety and Welfare Act. That's serious business. Employers have to provide a safe working environment. End of story. And in this case, it wasn't just one mistake. The door had been faulty for a while, and the trucking contractor knew about it. That's where the real failure lies. not in the door snapping, but in the failure to fix it when there was time to prevent this whole mess. So, what's the takeaway? If you're in a high-risk job, or any job really, you deserve safe working conditions, and if your employer fails to provide that, you have every right to make a claim. Workers' compensation exists for a reason, and this case shows just how critical it is to take action when things go wrong. For the injured truck driver, this was a long, painful road, but in the end, justice was served.